remember staring at my phone at 2:57 a.m., watching the screen light up and then fade back into darkness.
No message, no missed call, nothing.
And somehow, that silence felt louder than any argument we had ever had. Have you ever been in a relationship where the worst fights weren't shouting matches, but the moments when the other person just stopped talking to you? Because that's exactly where I was. Lying in bed in our small London flat, wide awake, the hum of distant traffic outside the window, the only reminder that the wall was still moving, while mine felt completely frozen. And the scariest part?
This wasn't the first time.
And deep down, I couldn't shake the thought. What if this time the silence didn't end? What if this time it actually broke us? I'm 28, married, living what most people would probably call a normal life in the UK. We both work stable jobs, we pay our rent on time, we spend Sundays grocery shopping or walking through parks like Hyde Park with takeaway coffee in hand. From the outside, we looked fine. We weren't dramatic. We didn't have explosive fights. We weren't that couple people whispered about. At least, that's what I used to believe. Because the problem was never the arguments themselves. It was what came after. My husband had this pattern, because calling it a habit felt too light. Every time we disagreed about something even slightly serious, he would shut down completely. No raised voice, no insults, no slamming doors, just silence. At first, I thought it was emotional maturity. I even admired it. I remember telling my friends over drinks, "He's so calm. He doesn't say things he'll regret." And to be fair, that was true. He once told me, in the most composed tone, "When I'm angry, I'm scared I'll say something that hurts you, so I choose to stay quiet." Back then, I thought that was love. Now, I'm not so sure, because what he called protecting me slowly started to feel like abandonment. The first few times it happened, I tried to be understanding. I told myself he just needed space. So I waited, and waited, and waited. Sometimes it lasted a few hours, sometimes a full day. Once, it stretched into nearly 3 days, where we barely spoke, moving around each other like strangers, sharing the same space. Do you know what that does to you? It's not just silence. It's suffocating. You start replaying everything. Every word, every tone, every expression. Did I go too far? Was I too harsh? Should I just apologize first? Even when you're not sure you were wrong. Especially when you're not sure. And every time, I was the one who gave in first. I'd send a message. "Are you still upset?" Or softer. "I don't like this. Can we talk?" And eventually, he'd respond. Calm, collected, like nothing had happened. We would fix things, but not really. Because the next time we argued, the silence came back. Longer, colder, more distant. At some point, I realized something that frightened me more than the silence itself. I was changing. I started choosing my words carefully, avoiding certain topics altogether, swallowing things that bothered me. Not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of being shut out again. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just his coping mechanism anymore. It was shaping who I was. The situation that had me lying awake at 3 a.m. started, like always, from something small. It usually does. A disagreement over something ordinary. I don't even remember the exact words anymore. But this time, something was different. For the first time in a long time, I knew I wasn't wrong. I had thought it through. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I wasn't being unreasonable. I was just expressing how I felt. And somehow, that made it worse. Because when I didn't back down, he disappeared. Not physically, but emotionally. Completely. And to make it even harder, we weren't even in the same place. We were doing long distance for a few weeks because of work. Which meant, when he chose silence, it was absolute. No eye contact. No presence. No accidental softness. Just an empty chat screen. At first, I told myself not to message him. I sat there, phone in hand, fighting the urge, because I knew the pattern. If I reached out again, it would teach him that he could keep doing this. That no matter how long he stayed silent, I would always come back. So I didn't text. An hour passed, then another. Then night came. And suddenly, it was nearly 3 a.m. and I was still staring at a conversation that hadn't moved. And the worst part? It wasn't even anger anymore. It was something heavier. Quieter. Something like exhaustion. Because this time, it wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about how many more times I could go through this before something inside me just shut down completely. I used to be the one who couldn't stand silence. Now, I was becoming part of it. And that terrified me because I could feel it slowly. The patience I once had, the love that made me reach out first, the part of me that believed we'd always be okay. It was fading, and I didn't know if that was self-protection or the beginning of the end. The strange thing about emotional distance is it doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in, quietly. The next morning, I woke up with a headache, barely rested. My first instinct, before even opening my eyes, was to reach for my phone. You already know what I was hoping for. A message. Anything. Even just morning. But there was nothing. The same empty screen. And in that moment, something shifted. Not dramatically. Not like everything shattered. No, it was quieter. More dangerous. Because instead of feeling hurt, I felt numb. I went through my day automatically. Brushing my teeth, making tea, opening my laptop for work. But none of it felt real. The silence followed me everywhere. In the kitchen, on the bus, during meetings. It sat quietly in the background, reminding me something is wrong. Someone chose not to talk to you. By midday, I opened our chat again. Still nothing. And then the thoughts came. Does he even care that I'm hurting? Is this easy for him? Or is he just used to this? I tried to push it away. Told myself he just needed space. But there's a difference between space and making someone feel invisible. And I was starting to feel invisible. That afternoon, I had a moment I can't forget. I was sitting alone, staring at his name on my screen. And for a second, I didn't recognize what I felt. It wasn't love. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was distance. And that scared me more than anything. Because love can survive arguments. But distance, that slowly erases everything. That night, my phone finally lit up. My heart reacted instantly. Hope. I grabbed it. A message from him. Are you still mad? I stared at it for a long time. Because it felt so small. After everything, no acknowledgement, no understanding, just a question that somehow made it feel like everything was my responsibility again. And for the first time, I didn't know how to respond. The old me would have softened immediately, but this time, my fingers didn't move, because something inside me asked, if I respond the same way, will anything change? So instead of replying, I started writing. Not to him, to myself. I opened my notes and poured everything out. Every time I felt invisible. Every moment I shrank myself. Every time I convinced myself something wasn't a big deal when it was. And one line stood out. I don't feel safe expressing my emotions anymore. That hit me hard. Because isn't that what a relationship should be? A place where you can be honest. And yet, I wasn't. I looked back at his message. Are you still mad? And for the first time, I saw it as a test, not of him, of me. I took a breath and typed, I'm not mad anymore. I'm tired. Then I continued. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one trying. Every time we argue, you disappear. And I'm left here overthinking everything. I understand you don't want to say something hurtful, but your silence hurts too. And finally, if this is how we handle problems, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I sent it and waited. But this time, the waiting felt different. Not anxious, just still. The next morning, he replied, I didn't know you felt like that. It wasn't defensive, but it wasn't enough either. Still, it was something. A crack. I replied carefully. I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose, but it's hurting me. I don't need perfect communication. I just need you to stay. Even when it's uncomfortable, he answered. I thought giving space was better, and I understood. In his mind, he wasn't hurting me. He was trying to protect me, just in the wrong way. Space is okay, I replied, but disappearing isn't. There was a pause. Then he asked, what should I do instead? That question changed everything. Because for the first time, he wasn't avoiding, he was asking. I think if you need space, just tell me. Say you'll come back, so I'm not left wondering. He replied, okay, I can do that. It wasn't a big moment. No dramatic apology. No perfect resolution. But it was enough. We talked, slowly, awkwardly, but we stayed. And that changed everything. That night, I lay in the same bed, same room, same quiet. But it felt different, lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because something had finally been understood. Silence isn't always the absence of love. Sometimes it's the absence of tools. But that doesn't mean you have to accept it.
Because love,
Real love should grow, should learn, should adapt. And sometimes it takes reaching your limit to finally say what needs to be said. If you've ever felt this kind of quiet distance in a relationship, I'd really love to hear your story. Share it, because sometimes speaking up is the first step to breaking the silence.